In our last video, you saw that amazing Hypercar simulator in action. Now today, let's see how it all comes together. Let's take a look at the overall construction of our simulator and how it all comes together. The core of our rig is a Track Racer TR80 aluminium profile cockpit with a standard Track Racer GT style seat placed up against a triple 32-inch monitor setup. Two vertical pieces of aluminium profile have been placed at the back of the cockpit to assist in the mounting of props like safety nets and the restraints featured here. These restraints are mounted via horizontal pieces of aluminium profile running through the center of the actual construct, allowing us to modify their position in the cockpit. The restraints were arguably the most difficult part of the construction process. These parts are quite large, weighing at approximately 2.5 kilograms on each side, with the left side restraint being at over 75 centimeters in length and about 40 centimeters in height. After a lot of trial and error to construct these out of wood and foam, I found that 3D printing them was the most durable and viable option to replicate the restraints found in the real life cars. 3D printing them allowed us to create their shape in any style that we wanted, without having to worry about the difficulties of cutting them into shape that we would have faced with wood or foam. This, however, made the project quite expensive, and it was incredibly difficult finding a company that would take on such a niche task. But with the help of David Mullins, a 3D designer and modeler based here in Australia, we managed to design and create our restraints to our liking. Once the printing and construction was complete, we needed to make these look similar to their real-life counterparts. We had them wrapped in vinyl by the experts at That's a Wrap Vinyl here in Victoria. They specialise in wrapping luxury and supercars, and they did a really fantastic job here. Our right side is mounted onto the vertical piece of profile at the back of the rig via a long channel running through the restraint itself. This allows me to change the exact position of them by loosening the bolts, giving me a lot of flexibility. The left side, however, was a little more tricky. Due to its size and the challenge of getting in and out of the cockpit, we needed to mount this restraint onto a separate stand that we made out of more aluminium profile. This requires me to pull the restraint in after I get into the cockpit, as you can see here. The process isn't really optimized and I need to come up with a better solution for this, but for now it serves the purpose and it's quite sturdy while driving. Now, as I said before, these were fairly expensive to build, with the entire process from the design and printing to the wrapping costing a total of about $2,300 Australian, which is about the same price as a SimiCube wheelbase. I can't complain about the results though, and I honestly feel so immersed when I'm sitting inside and surrounded by these restraints. And the realistic environment that they provide in our POV footage is amazing. You definitely get what you pay for in this case. For our wheelbase, we're still running with our Phanteks DD1 featuring a peak torque of 20 Nm, but I only run it at about half of that. It's been almost 2 years of use and I've still not had any issues with it. There was one instance where I found the wheelbase would lose connection for a split second and then come back randomly, but after some troubleshooting I found that this was an issue with USB connection and not actually a problem with the wheelbase. Changing the USB slot it was plugged into solved this problem. The only criticism that I have for the Phanteks ecosystem as a whole is its quick release system. I'm really not a fan of the pins. They do create a point of failure in the product, and although I've not had any issues yet, I'm sure that given long enough, I'm going to run into problems with it. When this happens, I'm probably going to change to SimiCube. For our wheel, we've gone with the Picorni Engineering LMPH. This wheel's design is based loosely off of the Porsche LMDH wheel, with some slight changes, for example the colour and size of its buttons. The wheel itself is 300mm in diameter and features a 6mm carbon fibre front plate and weighs under 2 kilograms with moulded silicone grips. Features a built-in 5-inch Vocore screen with a layer of Gorilla Glass protection, 16 RGB LEDs, 12 backlit buttons as well as 2 function buttons on the back of the wheel, 6 rotary encoders, and a 7-way funky switch located in the center of the wheel. The screen and LEDs are controlled via SimHub on your PC. The wheel is connected to the Phanteks wheelbase via a third-party quick release from SIMRACING machine, which I find is much shorter than the Phanteks branded one. The paddle shifters feel firm and are light and snappy on use, and the wheel overall is very comfortable to use over long driving sessions. For our pedals, we're using the ASUS Forte load cell. My only major issue with these is that I can't change the distance between the brake and throttle pedals, as it sometimes becomes a little uncomfortable for me. Performance-wise though, they're a great set of pedals, and they definitely were a step up from the Phanteks Club Sports that I started off with. They do have a small amount of travel though, and the brake pedal can be fairly stiff. This is the kind of pedal that I prefer, but they might not be right for you, so maybe try a set out before you decide to make a purchase. Our center console was completely DIY, and it's actually made out of cardboard. It was constructed by mounting a piece of aluminium profile onto our cockpit in the same area that you'd usually mount a shifter or a handbrake. Then I cut some leftover cardboard to size and wrapped it in an adhesive carbon fiber wrap, and then put it all together using double-sided tape. The entire process was pretty easy and it came out great, costing me under about $40 Australian. Our button box was from SimRacing for You. This is my 5th button box from them, and I just can't get past how good they are for their price and quality. I'm also the kind of person who's not a big fan of RGB and overly fancy lighting and colour. Prefer more of a uniform and realistic look. So these button boxes really suited our cockpit well, and they have plenty of functions because we've got 4 two-way switches, 8 metallic push buttons, a latching toggle switch with a cover, 4 rotary encoders, as well as a switch to turn the backlighting on or off when I don't feel like having it lit up. The box is also completely plug and play with no software required and connects via a single USB cable. As soon as you plug it in, you can just head into whichever game you want and start binding controls to the buttons. We also have a mounted Stream Deck. Although it doesn't actually control anything in the simulator, we use it to control our streaming PC with all our scenes and sources. For our monitors, we're using 3 1440p 32-inch curved monitors from AOC. They feature a curve of 1500R, and I got the 3 of them for under $1,000 Australian. They have a 165Hz refresh rate, although I don't really use them that high. Quality and performance wise, I've had no issues with them. The image is fairly bright, and the fake HDR mode is a nice feature because it helps the image pop more, making some older games like iRacing look a lot better. We hide the gap between our screens using the ASUS bezel-free kit. It's a fairly expensive piece of plastic, but it serves the purpose well. You can attempt to make your own from old TV screens, but I've found the ASUS branded ones to still perform better. Distance-wise, we sit about 65 to 75 centimeters from our screens, depending on the car that we're driving. Our ambient lighting is controlled by our Philips Hue light system. These bring the immersion from 0 to 100, and it's crazy just how much more real it makes the experience feel. They aren't too complicated to set up, although the app can be a bit annoying to use. The good thing is I've made a complete guide on how to set up the Hue light system from scratch, so I'll leave a link for that in the description. We can also swap the cockpit back into a GT car in under 10 minutes by unbolting the restraints and simply pulling our nets forward. We've got a pretty beefy PC running our simulator, and it needs to be because our content relies heavily on running our games at a really high visual fidelity. I'll leave the full PC specs in the description below, but our main components are an RTX 3080, Intel i9 10900K with 32GB of RAM. So hopefully that gave you a bit of an insight into how this project came together and how it works. The big question here would be, is it done? It's never done. That's one thing I've learned. In this hobby, it's never done. But that's a good thing, because it means that we've got plenty of new things that we can build and more things for you to enjoy in the future. And of course, if there's anything that I've missed here that you have questions about, please leave it in the comments below. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. But that's all we have time for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye now.